It's News for Scotland, week ending the 1st of December. Hello, thanks for joining me. A few minutes, we've got Scotland's quick news stories. Then we have 4 features today. Isle of Skye Small Halls Festival, that's just finished. Glasgow Women's Library, should they promote trans activism? Gaza solidarity, what was said at the recent Glasgow rally, and finally, a really engrossing conversation with a lifetime trade unionist who's got a book out soon. All that's coming up in the next 50 minutes or so. It's news where we are. In the UK Government autumn statement last week, the Chancellor emphasised the need to open pathways to work for those who are not currently in the workforce. The suggestion was made that some people with limited mobility could be encouraged to work from home using the kind of online systems which many adopted during the COVID lockdown. The UK Government has published its proposals to change the rules for those who can't get around or for claiming that they aren't fit for work. The Scottish Government this week announced their concern about the new proposed rules. Shirley-Anne Somerville, Scotland's Minister for Social Justice, said that most of the online jobs available are probably not suitable for people wanting to get back to work, as they're unlikely to have the up-to-date digital skills needed. The Cabinet Secretary also pointed out in a letter to the UK Government that Scotland takes a different approach to social security, one based on dignity and respect, and is concerned that the new rules could lead to sanctions being forced on people who can ill afford it. The Scottish child payment, meanwhile, is ahead of target. It was also announced this week that the Scottish Government's anti-poverty scheme, which pays out £25 per week for each eligible child, has now reached a record number of families. Figures published this Tuesday showed that the payment of £25 a week was reaching over 323,000 children, an increase of more than 7,000 when compared to June this year. The Scottish Fiscal Commission had forecast that the average number of children receiving support in 23-24 would be 309,000 compared to 323,000 which we now have. The figures out on Tuesday also show that £596 million altogether has been paid out via 5 social security areas which Scotland is responsible for, following the child payment at £459 million. The other £138 million went to Best Start Foods and the other Best Start programmes for families with young children. The admin for these schemes also seems to be working well, as the average time to process a child payment application is 6 working days, while for some of the Best Start schemes, applicants have to wait 4 working days. The Scottish Government thinks that schemes like these will lift 50,000 children out of poverty in the current financial year. Crime figures, meanwhile, are down. Crime levels have dropped by more than half since 2008-9, according to the latest Scottish Crime and Justice Survey. The 2021-22 official statistics show that people feel safer in their communities, with the proportion of those experiencing crime at a historic low. The survey of around 5,600 adults across Scotland estimates that since 2008-9, the volume of crime, including incidents not reported to police, has fallen by 53%. The proportion of people experiencing crime has fallen from 1 in 5 to around 1 in 10. Violent crime has decreased by nearly 3/5 at 58%, and property crime is down by 51%. The proportion of people who feel safe walking home alone after dark has increased to more than 3/4 at 76% from 2/3 last time. Those who took part in the survey were asked about their experiences of violent crime and property crime, including personal theft, other household theft and vandalism. They were also asked about their perceptions of crime, policing and the justice system. Most adults expressed confidence in the effectiveness of their local police, including their ability to handle incidents and solve crimes. Nearly half said the police in their local area do an excellent or good job. In England and Wales over this period, however, figures show a large increase in crime. Professor John Robertson, in his Talking Up Scotland blog, suggested this week that part of the reason could be better police recruitment in Scotland. Quoting the police promotion blog, Professor Robertson shows it would take 166,000 police officers south of the border to match Scotland's total, as Scotland, with about 1/10 of the population, has 16,615 officers. England, by contrast, instead of having 166,000, only has 139,000. Pro rata, therefore, Scotland has 19% more cops. And now back to Michael Matheson's massive mobile bill. This story rumbles on as the Health Minister and his boss Humza Yousaf ignore calls for Mr Matheson to step down. Here's Yvonne Alexis with the latest in that story.
Scottish Government Health Secretary Michael Matheson is facing increased scrutiny and criticism of his actions following the discovery that he ran up an £11,000 mobile phone bill on his work phone while on holiday in Morocco. After much dissembling, denial and finally paying the bill himself, he made an emotional statement in the chamber at Holyrood, admitting that in fact his children had run up the bill while watching football on his phone during their holiday break. Critics both within and without the SNP have been quick to point out that he lied on several occasions regarding this matter, despite many opportunities to simply state the truth and get beyond it. His reaction has created a schism within the party, adding problems to his already beleaguered leader Humza Yousaf and creating demands for his resignation. His previously respected position is now in tatters, his role in government a matter of conjecture, and the ultimate outcome is to add to the litany of problems for the SNP with regard to trust and integrity, especially given that Police Scotland are still investigating the party's finances.
Should Michael Matheson resign? What's your opinion? You can contact us on info@newsforscotland.org or leave a comment on our Facebook page or under our YouTube edition. And now, heat your home the green way. Heat from homes and buildings accounts for 20% of Scotland's carbon emissions. According to Patrick Harvey, Scotland's Zero Emissions Minister, we can't get to net zero without greening our heating systems. Replacement for today's methane-burning boilers could see heat pumps or district heating systems or perhaps other technologies. For Patrick Harvey, there's no one-size-fits-all approach, and the system used will vary according to the type of building and the location. On a timescale, moving away from fossil-fuelled heating, Mr Harvey said that new regulations could apply from 2028. That's if his proposals are passed by Parliament, expected to be debated in 2025. That means buildings will be moving towards the new heating systems in the 2030s. The Conservatives were worried about the costs of conversion. Miles Briggs, MSP, said that rural homeowners may face a bill of over £30,000 and that the government's proposals represent a 10-year time bomb. Patrick Harvey had also announced, however, that higher energy efficiency rules could be brought in to both keep houses warmer and reduce bills. He also said that Scotland has the most generous package of grants and loans for people wanting to switch to low-carbon heating. There's been comment on social media about how difficult it is to install a ground heat pump if you live in a flat, which 36% of Scots do. Journalist Leslie Riddoch on Twitter X last week asked why the Scottish Government isn't putting more emphasis on district heating systems. Scandinavian countries, she said, have heated themselves that way for the last century. And now the first ever Green MSP wants a Scottish Greens clear-out. Robin Harper was elected a Scottish Green MSP in 1999 and remained in the Parliament until 2011. No longer a member of the Green Party, he called this week for an upwelling amongst the members to replace the current leadership. Mr Harper told Holyrood magazine that a small cabal had taken over the Scottish Party and that members don't realise how far this group has drifted towards being in total control, his words. Referring to the Greens' controversial support for the transgender movements, Mr Harper said that the party's leaders don't want to listen to reason and that they have created a chilling atmosphere of censure and fear over the gender identity issue. A new Green group has been set up. The Scottish Green Women's Declaration for Sex-Based Rights opposes the Scottish Greens' line on sex and gender. The official line states that trans women are women, meaning that men with a gender transition certificate are actually women, and that party members who oppose this belief are transphobic in their words and therefore subject to the party's disciplinary procedure. The article in Holyrood magazine by Kirsten Patterson points to several members of the SNP and Labour and about 40 members of the Scottish Greens who don't support the party line and who support women's sex-based rights. Robin Harper was himself reported to the party following a conversation he had with a councillor when he said he was concerned about the proposed gender self-ID legislation. He wrote to the party in August to cancel his membership, saying that in his words that the Scottish Greens had lost the plot. The former MSP and land reform campaigner Andy Whiteman resigned from the Greens in 2020 for similar reasons. Mr Whiteman stood again for Parliament as an independent but failed to win back his seat. We also have a story coming up in a few minutes on the Glasgow Women's Library and their support for the trans movement. Will Russia soon make it illegal to be gay or trans? Members of Russia's LGBT community are worried about the move by the Russian Justice Ministry to brand them as extremists and open the way to banning them. The ministry is going to ask Russia's Supreme Court to make that judgment later this month, opening the door to prosecutions. This would present a dramatic legal change. Russia decriminalised homosexuality in 1993. A gay activist in St Petersburg suggested that Putin was behind this move as he prepares his latest run for the presidency, elections being held next year. Putin, formerly an officer of the KGB, has often in recent years been photographed next to icons from the Russian Orthodox Church. He now often portrays Russia as a defender of traditional morality and has criticised the West for its decadence and support for gay parades and for dozens of genders, as he put it. In 2017, Putin's ally Razman Kadyrov claimed that there were no gays at all in his country of Chechnya, and if there were any, they would be removed. Next story, Alex Salmond takes the Scottish Government to court again. And once again, Yvonne Alexis has a story for you about the former First Minister who has already won 2 legal cases and is going to court again for compensation. And again, here's Yvonne with that story.
Former First Minister Alex Salmond is taking legal action against the Scottish Government, accusing it of misfeasance in relation to the handling of sexual harassment complaints made against him. In a statement following the calling of the case in the Court of Session, Salmond said that not one single person has been held accountable for the botched handling of the investigation. With this court action, that evasion of responsibility ends, he added. The Scottish Government admitted in 2019 it had acted unlawfully in its investigation and complaints against the former First Minister. There is considerable speculation as to why Alex Salmond has decided to go down this route when he has already received a full apology and payment of his legal fees. Some believe that it is simply a matter of revenge and additionally a way to cause maximum difficulty for his former party colleagues in the SNP. Current First Minister Humza Yousaf does not have his troubles to seek.
There's more from Yvonne later, but finally, before we move on to this week's features, one piece of arts news. The new Galloway Screever has been announced, and she is author, musician and poet Susie Briggs. This one-year residency, arranged by the National Library of Scotland, has the aim of promoting the Scots language in all its regional variations. Previous Screevers have worked in Orkney Scots and in the Doric areas of Scotland's northeast. Dumfries-based poet Liz Niven was one of the selection panel. The post as Scots Screever, she said, is a wonderful development to ease up and promote the Scots language. A Dumfries-based Screever will raise the status and knowledge to Dumfriesshire and Galloway Scots even more. I'm fair chuffed to welcome a new writer to the post. And Susie Briggs herself said, the role of Scots Screever will open up new exciting opportunities for me to create new Scots language work in all areas I currently work in and beyond. I can't wait to explore the archives for inspiration. And that was Scotland's quick news for this week. Our first feature this week brings us to the Isle of Skye, the island of music, and for 6 years now, Skye has hosted the Small Halls Festival in November. Joe Murray visited Skye the other day, and here's his live report from that festival.
Hello, this is Joe Murray for News for Scotland, and I'm talking with Ewan McIntyre of Shall Festival Small Halls here in the Isle of Skye. So, Ewan, this is the last night of what is a wonderful festival of Small Halls. Can you tell us a little bit about the festival and how it's gone this year?
Absolutely, yeah, it's been fantastic. So basically the festival is about bringing together 8 musicians from different backgrounds, and they get together and form 2 unique bands over the course of 2 weeks, and each week it changes. So basically they make a whole new set and then they go all across the little halls around Skye and do a unique show every night, and it basically in top and tails with a ceilidh dance and the show mixed together with all of the musicians together. So, and the other ones are just 4 of the musicians in their individual bands. If that's clear.
Yeah. So how have the responses by the audience and the artists been?
I mean, for the artists, they get treated really well, and for musicians, I play a lot of music myself, and it's quite difficult sometimes to really feel a deep connection with what you're doing and who you're playing to. In this particular festival, they get to be based in one central location and go off to these different areas and really get to know each other and get to know the music that they're playing and get to know the communities that they're playing with. And so for them, it's luxury. I think it's a really perfect artistic, holistic experience. And then for the halls themselves, they get some of the best musicians from over Scotland brought right to their doorstep, doing something completely unique. But still, it hovers around a kind of traditional sphere. But it's definitely, we've got like Hannah Moole, who is this amazing cellist who doesn't play any traditional, like classical and kind of pop, weird, abstract stuff. And and then she gets to mix together with these traditional musicians and
I
stuff.
just heard her sing a song there, and she was absolutely wonderful.
It's haunting.
I reckon somebody like Bjork at their best could not have even sounded as good as that.
Totally,
she is excellent, isn't she?
And then we've got Laurie Watson, who is like an award-winning Scots singer and fiddle player, and just an array of amazing artists, young and old.
We're talking about the artists there. But how important do you think a festival such as this is to the local communities?
I think that it's really essential for the arts in general to be pushed to their limit. So you can have your local things, and that's really, really important to develop local artistic skills, and that's what we actually have with the pipe bands, the young pipers that have been brought together by Innes McCanny. I guess, and he's just, it's all these young talents, and then they get to play alongside these international level artists, and for them it kind of shows you what you can do with music and the value of it. So it's mixing the folk level culture of music alongside international level and national level, and just trying to get that sense of that you can do it as a community thing. You can also do it professional, and both things are just as important, and mirror each other and make each other stronger.
And I have to say, watching those young teenagers today, they were absolutely immense. I mean, they're incredibly talented young people.
Absolutely,
it was wonderful to watch them.
Yeah.
Now, you are the Gaelic officer for this project.
Yeah.
How important is that, and what is your role really in the Gaelic side of this?
Yeah, so my role is to make sure that there's, the Gaelic culture is respected and represented across the activities that we do, and it's an integral part of Scottish culture, and particularly on Skye in the last 50 years, it's really, the levels of Gaelic have plummeted severely, and so it's trying to do it from a kind of grassroots up way in which it just becomes a normal thing as opposed to being something that's enforced. And so you've got things like it's really strong in schools, but then making sure that it's a part of the community activities that happen too. So within music, it's just music and arts are just a great way of getting people involved in things and making it normalised.
Are you seeing progress in that work?
Well, I just started in August, so...
Well, that's a bit unfair then.
But I mean, I think, I'm hopeful, at least, like I was saying earlier, I lived in Quebec, and just the conversations that you have there with minority languages. I mean, French is no minority language, but in North America, surrounded by Anglophone cultures, is a big conversation that everybody has, the importance of French language and indigenous languages, and it is an important conversation that we should be having on a much deeper level in Scotland.
For the same reasons, of course.
Yeah. With Gaelic and Scots and all the little intricacies of our culture. Yeah.
You're a very accomplished musician in your own right, Ewan. So
stop.
No. I've been watching and listening to you for a few days now. I was introduced to your music through a friend of mine, or a mutual friend of ours. Yeah. So tell our listeners a little bit about your own music.
About my music?
Yes.
Well, I started... Music is just like such an important part of my life, and particularly as a teenager, I just like writing songs and rocking out with friends. And currently, I've done music in lots and lots of different ways, and like folk rock, lots of different styles. But currently, I kind of see it as a really great tool to use to engage with communities and young people particularly, to express themselves and to bring people together. I'm an addicted songwriter. It's like, for me, that's my therapy, and couldn't stop if I wanted to.
But you've you've had some success as a musician, yeah? You seem to have some success as a musician, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's like all relative, really. It's like, what is success? If you're having a good time and if you're enjoying yourself, then that's the most important thing. Yeah, I've played with like award-winning bands and like bluegrass Celtic bands, Southern Tenant Folk Union. I've sang at the Scottish Parliament to like 10,000 people, and I've had some good gigs. Supported Coolio when I was like 19 or something like that. That was probably the most ridiculous gig that I've ever done. Yeah. I think he was banned from Edinburgh after that gig. And but
I read somewhere you supported the Hot House Lawyers as well. Is that right?
I did. Yeah. I'm not sure where you read that, but yeah, I did. In 2013, I think, with my old band, the Southern Tenant Folk Union. Yeah.
So that's a success, isn't it? And a personal success in your music.
Yeah, for sure. And I've toured around Europe and toured around North America, and yeah. Love it.
Now, I was introduced to your music on YouTube. This goes out on YouTube. I'll put a connection to you.
Please do.
And
I'm doing shows with my band this year, and we're playing festivals and things. So yeah. So
what's your band's name?
Well, it's just under my name, which is Ewan McIntyre. And yeah. Well, it started off as I was in Canada basically, and because I'd always played with bands, but then I arrived in Canada. Met a guy and he was like, here, play me some of your songs, and I was like, oh, cool, and play some songs. So then we recorded an album, and we did some other recording projects, and yeah, just kind of like,
Well, I'll put a link up
cheers,
to your, because I'm pretty sure talking to you, some of your listeners would like to sort of make a contact with you and listen to your music. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Right, so just to go back and to end here, back to the festival, You're obviously happy about how the festival's gone this year. Are you looking forward to next year?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What's your hopes for next year?
So the team is we've done outstanding work because we only just started at the end of September, all four of us. So we had like 2 months to put this all together, and it's been outstanding. So now we're really in the throes of planning next year and planning, everything for that, so it's going to be amazing.
But we started around about the same time as News for Scotland, so we've only 2 months to put this all together as well. So
cool.
we're living in the same timeline.
Cool.
But anyway, Ewan McIntyre, thanks so much for talking to News for Scotland.
Cheers.
And we wish you good fortune for this festival next year. It's an absolutely wonderful festival. Been really enjoyed. You can hear the crowd in there tonight. Yeah. It's been a really brilliant night with some really talented musicians. Ewan, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you for having us.
And that was Ewan McIntyre. You can find Ewan's band, the Ewan McIntyre Band, on YouTube. As you can imagine, the last night of a festival can be very busy for the organisers, and trying to interview them during the show, can be tricky. The festival's creative director, Jamie Sutherland, was no different, but he was very helpful and managed to spare me a few minutes. I'm talking with Jamie Sutherland here as creative director of Shell's Festival for Small Halls. Jamie, this is the last night of the Small Hogs Festival, and I've had a thoroughly great night tonight. You, as creative director of the festival, you've not a lot of time to put this together with your team. But how do you think it's gone?
I think we've had an amazing 2 weeks, amazing fortnight. Our events coordinator, Rory Gordon, pulled together the artistic content. It was my job to kind of give him the means to go and put on a festival. And Ewan McIntyre, our Gaelic officer, and Lorraine McLucas, our sort of operations manager. Between the four of us, we've managed to pull together the thing, and it's been amazing. It's been really, really good. Seeing concerts in the small halls across the island happen, live performance, unique live performance, and some of the spots have just been incredible to watch, a very different experience for me, so that's
Well, I can certainly agree with that, because what I've seen tonight, the talent and the skills and musical skills in there has been absolutely phenomenal, and everybody's having a ball in there.
Yeah.
But for such a short period of time, personally I think they've done a remarkable job.
Oh, thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you how you feel about next year. What should you hopes for next year?
The annual programme for next year is starting to come together. It's I just came into post in last week of September. So we had a major funding application that needed to be put in. We had the Small Halls Festival put together. So we've started plotting and planning for next year. Trying to put together events that create a bit of excitement while also fulfilling Shell's intrinsic remit to put community-based events out and bring local communities together to celebrate sort of performance and art and culture and being together. So that's the plan.
Well, I can say you certainly did that. Well, Jamie Sutherland, thanks very much for talking to News for Scotland. We've spoken to your colleague Ewan McIntyre, and the whole thing has worked really well. So thanks very much for talking to us.
It's a pleasure.
And great luck for next year. And I hope if it goes as well as this, it's going to be another great festival.
We'll see you next year.
And if you're anywhere, you should come and watch this. It's absolutely brilliant. Well, that was Shall Small Halls Festival in Skye for 2023, and by all accounts the festival was a great success. If the final show was anything to go by, I would have to agree. This is Joe Murray for News for Scotland. Thanks for listening.
Our next feature, violence against women and girls. 16 Days of Activism focusing on violence against women and girls is a campaign which has just been launched for this year. In Scotland, the campaign was marked with an exhibition at the Glasgow Women's Library, the only such library in the UK, which has provided resources to campaigners since 1991. Glasgow Women's Library GWL say that their vision is of a world in which every woman is able to fulfil her potential and where women's historical, cultural and political contributions to society are fully recognised, valued and celebrated. The exhibition last Saturday, that's the 25th, featured protest placards and posters which activists had made for various recent protests in Scotland. The choice of poster included in the exhibition has, however, been criticised by some women's campaigners for including campaign material from trans activists. So is this part of GWL's inclusiveness policy? Do trans rights fit alongside women's rights? And I'm speaking this week to Jenny Wilmot, who's a feminist and lesbian campaigner, and we're going to talk about the 16 Days of Activism, which has just begun, campaigning against violence on women and girls. So, Jenny Wilmot, good morning. Good to have you on the show.
Morning. Thank you very much for having me.
A campaign began in Glasgow and indeed internationally last Saturday, I think it kicked off. And this is the 16 Days of Activism. Now, this is focusing on the amount of violence and generally not acceptable behaviour by men against women. Is that what it's all about?
Yeah, it's called the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. It's a UN campaign, and it starts with the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which is the 25th of November, and it runs until the 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day.
Yeah, I see. Now, in Glasgow in particular, we have the Glasgow Women's Library, which was established a number of years ago. And I'm looking at the website to see that's actually unique, but it is a for women resource. But they do actually make the point that there's really nowhere else like that in Britain. It's a quite unique and important institution, isn't it? Are you generally supportive of Glasgow Women's Library and their work?
Generally, we would be supportive of a women's library that was for the focus for women and a hub for information about and for women, and that generally promoted women's rights, yes. The Glasgow Women's Library, certainly when it was founded, was all about women. Women were centred. Mm-hmm. Men were allowed to visit, but it was by appointment only. That's not the case anymore.
Okay, so it is exclusively women, but that raises the question of inclusive, because, let's just go to the reason we're talking about them today, because they kicked off the 16 days with an exhibition. Now, they had invited people to send in things like placards or posters that had been used in recent demonstrations for women's rights. Now, many women I've spoken to were surprised by the content of that demonstration. Now, as you said, looking at the pictures on Twitter, I see a lot of posters, not for women's campaigns at all, but for trans campaigns. And I've just read an open letter, which I believe you're involved with, which says that, in fact, the majority of the posters and placards they collect were actually about trans campaigners. demanding trans rights. So is that your experience?
Yeah, they certainly, their events programme is about women, and their library generally is set up to be focused on women, but they have what they call an inclusive policy. So when they say women, their definition of women is extremely broad. So it includes men who identify as women, it includes non-binary people, and it includes anyone who is comfortable in a woman-centred environment. So really pretty much anyone. And yes, absolutely, the exhibition on Saturday, we visited it, and the focus was very much on trans rights placards. Now, the placards that were on display are ones that they have actually collected as part of their archive. So it's not just ones that have been brought along by activists. These are ones that they have made the decision to actually collect and save for posterity kind of thing. So yes, the main display in this little exhibition was of trans rights placards. There was a small bit, just a table of placards about the current conflict in Gaza. And there was another display over the other side of the room of placards that had been used in abortion rights protests. So yes, the focus was very much on trans rights. And actually, we were told by the curator quite a few of the abortion rights placards had been made by an organisation called Cabaret Against the Hate Speech, which is a man, basically.
Yes, now if people are not in Glasgow, I've actually heard this man. He's a cabaret singer. And the reason I've come across this bloke, Tom Harwood, I think is his name.
Tom Harlow.
Is because Harlow. Yeah, I went along last February to a public meeting by Kelly J. Keane. It was a weird event last February. I don't know if you were there, but there was on one side of George Square quite a large number of women, many of whom spoke, and I stayed for a whole 2 hours because it was fascinating to hear what they were saying. But while these women were talking about violence against women, and meanwhile at the other side of George Square, Tom and a lot of young people were doing cabaret songs. Very weird situation. On one side, people were arguing, giving evidence and explaining. On the other side, people were singing ABBA songs. So that's the background to me. It's obvious, though, to me as an outsider, in the feminist movement, there's obviously two views, isn't there? There's a view, as you said, the inclusive one, that women includes men who want to be women. And the traditional view that feminism is actually about women. So there is actually a split, isn't there?
There is, yes. And certainly I run, with my partner Lorraine, an organisation called Scottish Lesbians, and we very much take the view that lesbians are women, that men can't identify into being lesbians. Lesbians have to be female. And yes, there are women who take the opposite view to that men can identify into being lesbians. And so you're right, there is a bit of a split. And Glasgow Women's Library, in focusing on trans rights and putting that kind of front and centre, it really distracted from the work, the really good work that is going on with a lot of groups to end male violence against women and girls. You know, the protest that you spoke about at the Kelly J. Keane event in February, we were there as well. And you're right, it was very much designed to drown out speakers who were talking about violence, about male aggression towards women. And the same group has turned up at other protests. There was one in April where women were trying to see a feminist film at Edinburgh University, and that group again turned up to intimidate women and to try and prevent the film being shown, and actually were successful on that occasion. There's some really quite unpleasant footage of men shoving these signs that Glasgow Women's Library are now displaying into the faces of women to stop them speaking.
Yeah, and that's another issue I wanted to bring up. I know a number of women who attended the very successful Philia conference in Glasgow just about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Now, Philia is an international event which attracted something like 2,500 women to Glasgow. It was a superb event. There was a Glasgow City Councillor inside, I believe, one of the speakers, but also there was 2 Glasgow City Councillors outside protesting. And they were in fact supporters of the guy you're talking about. And he was actually there with his karaoke machine, shouting F you at the women as they attended the feminist conference. So you're saying placards have been made by that group, that's an anti-women group. So what are they doing in the Women's Library. Is that your point?
Absolutely. I mean, we were there. We were at the Filia conference. We were there queuing up to go in as he was shouting FU at us and other attendees. And yes, there were Green Party councillors present in the protest. And it was, well, the First Minister condemned it. You know, it cast Glasgow in a very poor light, that there are women, like you say, many hundreds of women who'd gathered in Glasgow for a conference to talk about women's rights, to talk about violence against women, to talk about female genital mutilation, all these really important issues globally for women. And there's a man shouting FU at us from across the street. I mean, it was absolutely disgraceful. And I was really pleased that the First Minister condemned it. But yes, this is the group that Glasgow Women's Library has decided to celebrate and to platform on the International Day for the elimination of violence against women.
What we're going to do next week, by the way, I believe you and others have written an open letter to the Glasgow Women's Library, and you're making that point that some of the placards are actually easily be described as anti-women. So you're writing this open letter, and I believe that's going to be public in a couple of days. So we will next week invite the Glasgow Women's Library to make a response. So that's where we are just now, aren't we? So you've looked at the posters and you've said this is not what we expect to find at the start of the campaign.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we asked the curator specifically, you know, are you collecting materials from women's groups on kind of the other side of the divide, our side of the divide, where we're campaigning for women's rights specifically, the gender critical side of things. And we were told, well, she said twice, that our views don't align with Glasgow Women's Library's values, which was just really disappointing. I mean, you know, it means that they're collecting one side of the debate. So, yes, we've organised this open letter. We are currently collecting signatures for it, and we're hoping to get that over to them in the next couple of days. And it will be interesting to see what their response is to that.
OK, well, thanks, Jenny Wilmot. And if the Glasgow Women's Library does have a response, we'll get in touch and we'll invite them to explain why they've made that curating choice. But anyway, don't forget, we're celebrating really the start of the 16 days of activism focusing on violence against women and girls. So Jenny Wilmot, thanks for talking to News for Scotland today.
Thanks very much for having me.
What do you think? Should the Glasgow Women's Library be focusing more on women's issues, and are trans women actually women? Tell me what you think. You can contact us, of course, on the Facebook page, or if you look underneath on the YouTube edition, you can leave a comment there. You can also write to us on info@newsforscotland.org. OK, Glasgow, like other cities, has hosted several protests in the last few weeks against the Israeli tactics following the Hamas attack of the 7th of October. But what are these protesters calling for? Yvonne Alexis now has a short report on the Glasgow rally of the 18th of this month. Here's what Yvonne saw and heard.
Some 18,000 people braved the relentlessly rainy weather on Saturday to attend a rally calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Politicians from the SNP, Scottish Labour and the Scottish Greens addressed the crowd of thousands who gathered in Glasgow Green. After listening to the politicians' remarks, the demonstrators left the Green to march through the city centre. The event was organised by a variety of organisations, including the Muslim Council of Scotland, the Muslim Association of Britain, Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign and Palestine Action Scotland, in a loose coalition called the Gaza Genocide Emergency Committee. Demonstrations have taken place each weekend since the conflict started in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen and Lerwick and other towns and cities across Scotland. According to Palestinian health authorities, at least 11,470 Palestinians have been killed since the war began, while about 2,700 people have been reported missing. Those attending the rally had been urged to write their names on their arms as a gesture of solidarity with the besieged population of Gaza, who have used this method so they can be identified and buried with relatives if they are killed. On Friday, hundreds of pupils joined a school strike for the Palestinian cause, with rallies held in Glasgow, London and Bristol as part of a number of school walkouts organised by the campaign group Stop the War Coalition. Scottish Greens councillor Blair Anderson said on X, the site formerly known as Twitter, that there would be no punitive action for any of the Glasgow school children who attended the rally. A number of pro-Palestinian marches were also held across Scotland on Armistice Day last weekend. Sammy Steen, who chairs Glasgow Friends of Israel, said his group advocated for peace and supported both the Palestinian and Israeli people. We advocate for both peoples to have their own homeland, which is quite unusual because nobody else, certainly locally and around the UK, advocates for both sides, he said. They tend to be either pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. We believe that you cannot have peace for one side, and therefore if you want peace, you need to have peace for both sides. The war has displaced more Palestinians than since 1948, according to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East, or UNWRA, which works in Gaza and the West Bank. UNWRA has warned that it would be devastating if cholera were to spread due to the lack of clean water. We will keep you advised on any significant changes in this difficult and worrying situation.
And that was Yvonne. Thank you. As we recorded this week's show, the temporary halt to fighting is being observed by both sides as the prisoner hostage exchanges continue. Finally this week, Jeanette Hill tracked down a trade unionist with a fascinating story to tell about his career in the Communication Workers Union and his struggle with stammer. Did you know there was an app to help? Here's Jeanette in conversation with Gary Clark.
So, hi folks, it's Jeanette Hill again, and I'm talking today to Gary Clark. And I believe, Gary, this is the first day that you've retired, is that right?
Yes, I finished up after 27 plus years in Royal Mail. Friday was my final day in Royal Mail.
Excellent.
So this is my first day I've actually been retired.
This is a good way to start it. And you were a CWU rep, is that right?
I was actually a branch. I was a rep, and my last role was a branch secretary.
Right.
A CWU Scotland number 2 branch.
Yep.
Which covers Royal Mail, East Central Scotland, from St Andrews over to Stirling, right down the Scottish border.
Wow.
I was the branch secretary for that area for all postal workers, parcel force, post office counter workers, all the aspects, cleaners, postmen.
Excellent.
You name it. I was under my sort of remit, that area.
That's a big area. And anything you want to say about the last 20 odd years in the Royal Mail? Anything you'd like to say there, Gary?
I remember 27 years ago, we were on a 6-day week.
Yeah.
We were part of the community. We knew every single customer.
Yeah.
We looked after them. We made millions of pounds of profit. We were nationalised at the time.
Yeah.
All that was that we were part of the community.
Yeah.
Now we've been privatised 28, 9 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we've had CEO try to dismantle the company, making millions upon millions for the shareholders.
Yeah.
And the services went downhill greatly. I can see more freely now because I'm no longer employed by Royal Mail.
Yeah.
But clearly they are getting away from the letter market, going solely for parcels, trying to casualise the industry.
Yeah.
And what we believe to be part of the community, when a lot of people, postmen may be the only person they see a day.
Yeah.
They don't see anybody else.
Absolutely. It was a service. Can I just take you back there to something you said? You said, just to say a little bit more for people who don't quite understand that, casualising of the industry. What do you mean by that, Gary?
Short-term contracts, short, small hours. When we were all full-time postmen.
Yeah.
They'll bring people in on small contracts, ask them to do overtime.
Yeah.
Just attacking the service.
Yeah. And agencies, I believe there's been a lot of agencies involved.
Agency workers are coming in, especially the mail centre area.
Yeah.
And bring agency workers in and short-term drivers.
Yeah.
It is attacking, which I believe Royal Mail should be part and parcel of the community.
Yeah.
We can go
service.
Out, service people. I remember when I was a postman many years ago, I'd help old pensioners take their bins out, bring their shopping in. One occasion, I'd done a sheltered housing.
Yeah.
And a woman had fell inside the house, pulled it, couldn't get hold of anybody. I ran round, got the police in, we kicked the door in, and she was lying there.
Yeah.
That's what a postman did.
That's exactly, yeah.
Day in, day out.
Yeah.
We knew our customers. We knew winter, if news lying for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So let's have a look, see what's happening, phone the police, see what we can do. Because we were part of the community, particularly in the winter.
And we've lost that, as you say. Any big major issues that you've had as the branch secretary in the CWU? I suppose there's lots of them with all those changes. Yeah.
Well, changes. We've been on strike the last 18 months now.
Yeah.
We took 18 days of strike action, and it's for Royal Mail. It was unbelievable money handed out to the shareholders,
Yeah.
and then cut the service. It led us into a major battle. We knew the battle was going to come ahead at some point after privatisation.
Yeah.
We fought off, and I'll be honest with you, what they've now done is for people leaving on ill health retirement. Mine is different, but people went, you should get 34 weeks' wages as to help them go ill health retirement, retrain, whatever. That's been reduced to 16 weeks.
Wow.
So when they're attacking sick pay, attacking terms and conditions, everything's under attack.
Yeah.
So they can keep the shareholders happy.
Get you, Gary. Yeah, a really tough time. You've been through the wars. You've been battling hard for your members, and for all of us, actually, as you say, in the community, because obviously it's a service for all of us. Most of us have noticed it is dramatically changed, the Royal Mail, and thank you for that service. Thank you for doing that. You've also you've got a service that you're putting out for stammerers, for you fight hard for people with disability rights, don't you, Gary? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've stammered all my life. People might not notice me now. I'm quite a confident speaker. But I imagine me as a 17-year-old leaving school, very bad stammer. I got involved in the trade union movement age 17. I'm now age 55. I've been involved in the trade unions all my adult days. Now, I believe in the trade unions and what I believe in the movement, I believe in helping me cure, or not cure because it's the wrong word, manage my stammer.
Yeah.
So I've managed my stammer very well. I speak at rallies, been on TV, done radio interviews, do things like this.
Amazing.
And so people don't know about stammer, but that's something I took on. A speech therapy at school never worked for me, worked for a lot of other people, but never worked for me.
Yeah.
So, I've got another condition called CIDP, that's why I've been made ill health retirement. It's a crippling neurological condition I've got.
Yeah.
So we find that at the same time. But so knew my career was coming to an end, work-wise, and I thought I want to give something back. So in the last 6 months, I've started volunteering for an organisation called STAMA.
Yes.
STAMA.
Yeah.
And I am now their trade union liaison officer. So,
and did you say it's got an app? Did I hear that right?
No, you're not wrong. No, it's STAMA, and it's STAMA is its name.
Yeah.
It comes from the British Stammer Association.
Yeah.
So it's now changed its logo into Stammer. I've been volunteering for the last 6 months as their employment support. But we look to go in the workplace, explain what stammering does, how stammering affects different people different ways.
Yeah.
Call centres. Call centres are a few points. We talk to a person who works there with a stammer. How do we help that person?
Yes. Yeah.
And how do they deal with other people? How do they engage with people at work? Their work colleagues?
Yeah.
And how do you deal if you're in a call centre and you get somebody who phones up who stammers?
Yes.
And all different ways of that. So I'm involved in that, and I'm now bringing the trade union movement into stammer. So for me personally, this is my legacy. I want to leave the movement.
Yes.
The movement's been very good to me.
Yeah.
I want to give something back, and this is what I want to do is help people who stammer in the workplace, help overcome the issues in the workplace. And me personally, I want to get people who stammer involved into the trade union movement.
Yes, I mean that's the great thing that you're saying there is we're actually talking about a wider reason why people should be in a union, aren't we? Rather than just protecting, say, your basic contract. It's more than that. It's about things like challenging disability
Well, I spoke at a CWU Equality event in September there. I'm doing the STC Disabled Workers Conference on the 2nd December. I'm doing a presentation there, which will explain how stammering affects people in different ways. It affects how, in the workplace, what we can do. Even things like, say, job interviews. How people are entitled to reasonable adjustments to go for a job interview if they've got a stammer.
Yeah.
If they're applying to do presentations or apply for promotions at work, or how they do day-to-day activity at work. a lot of people who stand do not realise, but they're covered by the Equality Act.
Yes, yeah.
So
I
you've
mean,
got
my
the-
husband has a stammer, and
Mhm.
interviews, especially online interviews, he struggles a bit. We never really thought that this is what we
Yeah.
should be saying, announcing it as a disability, and they've got to make allowances for it. Yeah, absolutely.
And it
Good
also
point.
goes into people's lives.
Yeah,
One we're picking up on is people who want to go to the GP surgery.
yes,
And for a person with stammer, phones are extremely difficult.
yes, yeah,
So there's a ways we can do texts, people can text a booking inside the local surgery,
yeah,
how we deal with healthcare, how we deal with education.
yeah.
I know myself at school, our teachers would take the feel out of me.
I mean, I'd hope that wouldn't happen now, but
It wouldn't happen now.
yeah,
I always remember the days I'm Scottish in primary school, and it was Burns night.
yeah,
And Burns night, so they'd always have the competition. So one person in the class would read out a Burns,
yeah.
and they say, Gary, you can't do that, so you just sit in the corner.
Ah,
I remember that. That really stuck with me a long time ago.
affects your self-esteem. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also how we train people in that. So I do a lot of tutoring I've done in the past for uni work.
Excellent.
It's how we do introductions and all these different ways how we can make it easier for somebody to start. So this is something I want to leave for the future generations coming through.
It's a great thing. And on that thought, you're actually going to be writing a book, aren't you? Now, this is what you're going to tell us about that, Gary.
Well, I want to write a book because I've got quite a colourful life.
You certainly have, yeah.
I've had quite a few challenges through my life, and I've got a working title, You Will Hear Me. So as somebody who had a stammer, who came through school, who left school, got involved in the trade union movement, a lot of challenges, been dismissed twice for trade union activity, for death threats of fascists.
Oh my God, right.
I've been through all that, and how I cope with that, and how I've now came through another crippling neurological disease called CIDP, which nobody's heard of, how I've dealt with that in the last 12 years. And I want to think there's a lot of stories there, a lot of funny incidents happened in my life in workplace you would not believe, when strikes I've been involved in, and lots of things in my life's happened. I've stood twice to be inside the general election campaigns. I've been twice a candidate for being an MP. So I've done all of that. So there's a book there. I just have to bring it out.
Absolutely. Inspirational. That book will be inspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. And we will put links on our Facebook page to like the Stammer app that you talked about. And when your book comes out, you'll come back and talk to us about it, won't you?
Definitely.
Thanks very much for talking to me today, Gary. It's absolutely great. Thank you.
Bye.
Time for me to wind up for this week's. Thanks for listening. Let us know what you think about our podcasts. How long should they be? When do you listen? Is it all at one go or a bit at a time? What kind of stories should we cover? The team really wants to hear from you, so why not drop a quick comment either on YouTube or on Facebook, or you can email info@newsforscotland.org. Remember, it's news where we are. I'm Hugh Stewart. I'll be back next week. So from the team, Joe, Jeanette, Yvonne and myself, thanks for listening. See you later.